Have you ever walked away from a conversation knowing you said everything, yet somehow it felt like you lost? Not because you were wrong, not because you didn't stand your ground, but because somewhere in the exchange, you gave away something deeper. Your peace, your presence, your power. That knot in your throat, that hollow ache in your chest. It wasn't from what was said, it was from what was stolen. And maybe, just maybe, you've spent too long surrounded by voices that dominate rather than discuss, that belittle rather than build, that shout louder, not because they're right, but because they need to feel like they are. You thought staying silent was surrender. You thought not defending yourself meant defeat. You thought walking away was weakness. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about communication is upside down? What if power never lived in words, but in the sacred space between them? There is a kind of silence that doesn't mean fear. It means control. It doesn't mean absence. It means presence. An overwhelming presence that unsettles everyone who thought they were in charge. Philosophers have touched this truth. Warriors have practiced it, but very few have lived it. This video is for the one who has felt drowned out, for the one who has been told they're too quiet, for the one whose calm was mistaken for cowardice. Today, I'll show you something rare, a silence that does not retreat. It conquers, because real power, it doesn't argue. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't scream to be heard. It just is. Let's begin. Why do we feel this desperate need to respond, to defend, to explain? Because we've been raised to believe that truth must be proven, that if we don't fight for our side, we lose. But here's what they never told you. Those who argue often are not defending truth. They're defending ego. And ego, fragile, panicked, always gasping for control, fears silence more than anything else. The moment you try to convince someone of your worth, your idea, your intention, you're already playing their game. Because if your truth needs their validation to exist, it was never yours to begin with. You weren't born to beg for understanding. You weren't meant to debate for dignity. There is strength in standing still, while chaos demands a reaction. Because the loudest one in the room isn't the most powerful. It's the one who could speak, but chooses not to. There is a kind of silence that speaks louder than thunder. It's not the silence of ignorance, not the silence of fear. It's the silence of sovereignty. And when it's mastered, it terrifies. Why? Because silence strips away the mask. It leaves others exposed, forced to fill the void with their own noise, their own uncertainty, their own fear. Psychologists have found that in high-stakes conversation, when one party goes silent, the other begins to unravel. The brain hates the unknown, and silence is the ultimate unknown. When you don't respond, people begin to wonder, did I say something wrong? Is he judging me? Does she see through me? Their mind races, their defenses crack, and you haven't said a single word. This isn't manipulation, it's precision, because in a world obsessed with reaction, non-reaction is power. Let's talk about presence, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that commands it. The philosopher warrior, the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, doesn't justify. They've become something different. They are not reacting to life. They are shaping it. When they walk into a room, they don't need to raise their voice, because presence doesn't come from volume. It comes from clarity, inner clarity. They observe, they listen, not to respond, but to understand. And when they do speak, it's deliberate, measured. Every word lands like a blade. This is the power of the silent architect, the one who does not chase control, but embodies it. And here's the secret. Their silence is not empty. It is full of purpose, full of energy, full of restrained force, waiting for the exact moment to act. Now let's get practical. How do you use silence? Not as escape, but as edge. First, hold your silence when your emotions beg you to speak. That pause, that restraint, that moment of tension, that's where your strength lives. Second, watch deeply. People reveal everything in the silence. Their fears, their doubts, their lies. You don't need to confront them. Just see them and store what you see. Third, stretch time. Let silence sit like a stone in the conversation. The longer it sits, the heavier it becomes, and the more they crumble under its weight. Fourth, stay unpredictable. Say less than they expect. Act later than they want. Confuse their rhythm. And once they're disoriented, you control the tempo. Remember, you don't need to win every battle. You just need to be the one who chooses when, how, and if the battle even happens. But let's not get this twisted. There is a difference between strategic silence and the silence of surrender. You know the kind, the silence where you bite your tongue, not from strength, but fear. The silence where you suppress your truth to keep the peace. The silence where you're being walked on and calling it virtue. That's not power, that's erosion. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Some people count on your silence. They depend on it because they know you won't push back, won't disrupt, won't demand. They build their comfort on your compliance. But here's the turning point. You can choose another kind of silence. Not the silence of the background, but the silence of the storm. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that doesn't shrink. The kind that, even in stillness, reclaims the room. So how do you make the shift? From reactive to sovereign. From silenced to strategic. It begins with one truth. You do not need to prove your worth. Not with explanations, not with arguments, not with applause. Your existence, your values, your vision, they don't need to be understood to be valid. That is the core of the silent force. You are no longer trying to be seen. You are seeing. You are no longer trying to win. You are choosing whether the game is even worth playing. And in that moment, you become untouchable. So now I ask you, how much of your life has been lived trying to be heard? How many times have you traded your peace for approval? How long have you mistaken silence for weakness, when it was your greatest weapon all along? If you've made it this far, comment below. My silence is strength, not for me, for you, to draw the line, to change the tone, to take back the narrative. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs those who rule from the center of the storm, who shape the world not with chaos, but with calm. The voice of true power is not the loudest. It's the quietest one that cannot be shaken.